This is Chris Whalen, CPA, and welcome to the Street Level Business Podcast. My CPA firm specializes in business and income tax matters for businesses and families and offers the full array of services you would expect from a full-service CPA firm. If you already have a question for me, you will see my website and phone number on the screen, both great ways to reach me. There is also a great text version of this memo. If you're listening to this on my blog page, you will see a link above this video window that says text version. And if you're watching on a video sharing platform, you will see a link in the description to that text version. Today's topic is coronavirus or COVID-19 case numbers do not matter, death rates do. I get many calls from business and individual clients asking me my feelings about the coronavirus or COVID-19. They are all hearing that case numbers are exploding around the globe. I decided to do some research and get more details than the headlines are showing us. What I found is that the total number of cases is only a small part of the story. I found the following to be much more important data. Number one, the number of deaths is a much more significant indicator of how virulent and deadly COVID-19 is. And number two, who is dying? And number three, in what age groups? And number four, are average healthy people in any age groups at significant risk of death if they get COVID-19? That answer is no. Or number five, are there other risk factors that most of us in the healthy population do not have, and so our risk is much less? That answer is yes. And number six, the overwhelming majority of the population, if infected, will not even have a mild symptom, let alone need to be hospitalized. This is hundreds of millions of people in the USA alone. I urge everyone to ignore the headlines and research the above questions as I have. This put the danger posed by the virus in proper perspective and showed the reality of what is happening. After my exhaustive analysis, the overwhelming majority of the population are not at risk of having mild symptoms, let alone death, if they are infected. Here are my suggestions. Fearful individuals who want to protect themselves because they have risk factors should self-quarantine. Those who are clearly not at severe risk if they contract the virus need to have free choice to live their lives as they did before the lockdowns. And number three, businesses need to open immediately with zero restrictions in place. My analysis shows there is no correlation between the total number of COVID-19 cases and the rate of death from COVID-19, meaning an increase in case numbers does not also mean the same relative increase in deaths. So my advice again is to do your own research as to what is really happening. These graphs help me understand how not virulent COVID-19 is. These two graphs represent total global cases over time and daily global deaths through June 30th, 2020. The first graph on your screen shows a skyrocketing total number of cases starting April 1st, 2020. The total global cases went from under 1 million to over 10 million by June 30th, an over tenfold increase. I'm going to leave this graph on the screen for another couple of seconds so everyone can take a really good look at it before I move on to graph number two. If you look at graph number two, which is now on your screen, you will clearly see a very steady pattern of deaths with no exponential increase during the same period. Again, no tenfold increase in daily deaths during a period of tenfold increase in cases. I'll also leave this graph on the screen for another few seconds so everyone can take a good look at it. If you look closely, the number of daily deaths on June 30th is lower than the April 17th to 19th time frame, and during this time there has been no spike in deaths. We can see that this significant increase in cases does not have a relative increase in deaths. So there is no correlation between confirmed cases and the number of people who will die from COVID-19. In fact, these two graphs clearly show that COVID-19 is less and less dangerous and that a lower and lower percentage of people that have COVID-19 are at risk of death. This has me wondering if the lockdowns are necessary, because apparently spreading the virus does not show an increase in death in people without risk factors. Just to make it clear, I put on your screen an overlay of these graphs, and you will clearly see the number of daily deaths having a very consistent pattern, while the number of cases has skyrocketed. I'll also leave this on the screen for a few seconds before I start talking again. Remember, increased testing brings larger case numbers. Deaths would be the same regardless, even if there was no testing. The next graph I want to show you is also very interesting. You'll see it on the screen now. This regards pneumonia deaths from 2013 through 2020. Look at the red line on the graph, which represents this current winter season compared to the other years. It is interesting and suspicious that suddenly, at the start of 2020, the number of pneumonia deaths plummeted, going against all average history from recent years. Either pneumonia deaths did actually decrease in 2020 in an almost statistically impossible way, or maybe tens of thousands of pneumonia deaths were misclassified as COVID-19 deaths on death certificates. I'll leave you with one last chart, which you now see on the screen. This is death by age group in the U.S. This shows what age groups are at the greatest risk and who needs to self-quarantine. The majority of people need to be able to get back to normal, as they are not at grave risk of death from COVID-19. Remember that all death rates are exacerbated by comorbidity factors. So the healthier you are at any age, the less likely you will even feel a symptom or know you have COVID-19. And based on the pneumonia graph above, it would seem that COVID-19 deaths are overstated. So, if they listed COVID-19 as the cause of death instead of pneumonia, how many other real causes of death were ignored? This brings us to the end of this edition of the Street Level Business Podcast. Questions, concerns? Call me on 732-673-0510. Thanks for listening. I hope you found this podcast informative. Remember, the moment you have a business or tax question is the moment you should be calling me. Have a great day.